Hey guys, welcome back to the Goodfellow Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Barone, and if you haven't already, like and subscribe. And don't forget about the Patreon channel and the Goodfellow shop with all the memorabilia, shirts, and everything like that. So without further ado, let's get into it. Today, on the Goodfellow Podcast, but I would either grab him by the neck or his ear or his hair if he had any, and I would let him know that now that you missed the one payment, it gets tacked onto the principal. Now that power, that call, me be able to do that, that's real power, that's strength, okay? And that is like a real brotherhood, if you ask me. If it wasn't there, he would have been dead. I would have killed him. And I didn't even think of nothing about it, you know. Hey guys, welcome back. Let's get right into it. So today, I'm going to talk about push. That's a kind of a slang word for pull, okay? A connected guy, the benefits to being connected is good in a lot of ways. As you can hear from most of the people on this genre, that being a wise guy, being an associate or a full-fledged wise guy or a captain and above, it's the connections you have and the power you have because, and I'm going to tell you how. Here, let me give you a quick little bit of a background story. So everybody knows I was an associate in the Bonanno crime family. I was originally supposed to be with the Genovese crime family. Now, I got started collecting money, loaning money with my father, as everybody knows. And sometimes I had to do my own strong arm work, which was I collected money from my father. I collected money from my uncle. I collected money from myself. Sometimes I would go by myself. Sometimes I would bring somebody else with me, and I'm not going to say their name or names. It all depends. So what happens is this: like when I was loaning money, I'll give you for instance, for one thing, there was a guy at the Bluebird taxi stand in New Rochelle, where I'm from. He owed me money. If he didn't pay, I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes I would try to give him a little thing depending on his excuse, but I would either grab him by the neck or his ear or his hair if he had any, and I would let him know that now that you missed the one payment, it gets tacked onto the principal. Because they always think that, I said, listen, guys, I didn't start this business the other day. You know what I'm saying? I've been around too long for this. But sometimes I had to use violence. And thank God, okay, I was kind of good at it. Also, going back to about the pull, there was a story I was in New Rochelle. It was a girl's house. My friend Lenny Monteleone and myself went there. We knew some of the people there. It was about maybe 50, 70 people like that, 60 people in her backyard, in the house, that kind of thing. It was on Parkhart Avenue in New Rochelle. It's right near the high school. I forget the girl's name too, whatever, it's not important, but she was pretty cool. And, well, there was some guys from out of town. And listen, everybody knows when you're from out of town, I don't care if it's the next town over, sometimes it's the next street over. Okay, that's the way it goes. You don't get along for some reason. I don't know why. I never really divulged myself into it, why, but it was just the way it was, okay? Just like we were the west side, then there was the east side of New Rochelle, and, whatever. Who thought they were better for whatever reason? But these guys were from out of town. I don't know if they were from Yonkers or the Bronx or whatever. I don't remember. Well, I don't know. They got a little nasty with something like that. There was I think it was 4 or 5 of them, if I'm not mistaken. So Lenny and I seen what was going on. We didn't like what was going on. And I said, well, if we're going to have to fight with these people, we're going to fight them. No problem. So Lenny goes, hey, Joe, there's 4 of them, or I forget, like I said, 4 or 5 of them. He says, maybe you should, maybe you should make that call, Joe. I said, nah, come on, Lenny, we could take care of this, me and you, because Lenny's tough. Lenny can fight. And, but the girl that owned that was actually, her mother and father owned the house. I guess they were away. She talked to me a little bit too. She was like, I guess she was being bothered by these people too. I guess, I don't know who the hell he thought they was. Well, anyways, they kind of like were running the party after a little while. So I says, Lenny, let's just take these guys out, whatever. So Lenny says to me, make that call, Joe. I says, I don't want to, because I don't like to do anything unless you really, really need it. Like, at least that's the way I thought back then. Well, sure enough, Lenny convinced me. He says, make the call. So I get on the phone. I asked the girl to use the phone in the house. I called up this place. I don't know if it was called Sammy's still. It was a bar in the west end of New Rochelle, right on Union Avenue. I don't know if it was called It's Magic then, if it changed. But anyways, the crew I hung around with was the Third Street Boys, or the Third Street Crew, or whatever you want to say. Well, this was a rough crew, obviously. We were about strong. We were probably about maybe 30, 35 guys strong. You know what I mean? When we all got together, you know. And there was guys that were older than me in there too. Most of them were, anyways. Lenny and I were about the same age, but there was older guys. Of course, everybody knows who was in Third Street from the New Rochelle. Anyways, I call up. I go, hello. And the bouncer going, hello. Or the bartender, hello. And I says, listen, hello, is Joe Colangelo there? Who? Joe Colangelo, because it's loud in there, you know, and I could hear all the thing. He says, all right, hold on. He says, who is this? And I told him, I says, Joe Barone. So anyway, finally gets Joe Colangelo. Joe gets on, hello. I said, Joe. He says, yeah, who's this? I can't hear you. Who? And I says, Joe Barone. He goes, hey, Joe Barone, come on over, man. We're having a party. Well, I said, listen, Joe, I'm in trouble. He says, what? Where are you? I says, I'm at Parkcard Avenue. I gave him the address. He says, by the high school? I says, yeah. He says, okay, we'll be right there. Well, I think it was 2 or 3 carloads came. There was about maybe 15 guys that came. One of my friend, this guy Charlie Savelli, he's not my friend anymore. Obviously, you don't like me because of what I did. But anyway, Charlie Savelli was as crazy as he could be, okay? Charlie came out of the car with a Viking axe that he took off the wall. Like, you know those decorations that they have with the real swords and the shield and the axe? Well, he took the axe off the wall at his place. It's called It's Magic, okay? Or Sammy's. Other guys had a couple of baseball bats. Dominick Cicale was there, who I just talked to about the other day. Raymond, everybody was there. All my guys were there. Well, what happened was I met them outside. The whole party, the whole house went outside because what happened was one of the girls that I guess maybe liked the guys or who actually invited these guys from another town, she says, listen, I don't know what's going on. She says, but this kid inside, he knows people, and he made a phone call. You better get out of here. Well, smart on their part. They ran. When I mean ran, they got out of there as fast as they could, got in the car and left. Well, sure enough, I apologized to all my friends, but the whole party saw me. They saw that I made one phone call and got all these guys there. Now, Lenny didn't even do that. I did it, okay? Now, listen, the only person that was really connected a lot in that life in my crew was really me. Okay, Johnny Valenti later on, he made some great connections too. People we all knew, other people, but I was the really one who my father was a wise guy. But, hey guys, I apologize for the interruption, but I got to thank my guys from Source CBD. They got to, I mean, today's episode is only because of them. They have tropical ointments, gummies, tinctures, and much, much more. This is good for joint pain, stress relief, which is one of the reasons why I take it, muscle recovery, everything. Believe it or not, they even have stuff for the dogs, if you believe it. Listen, you guys want to try it, go to sourcecbdhemp.com and try it. And don't forget to mention Goodfellows for a 20% discount. Thanks again for tuning in. And this is, oh my goodness, this is delicious. Thanks, guys. Right. But that power, okay, I did apologize to those guys because I said, listen, guys, I'm sorry they left and everything. They said, nah, Joe, don't worry about this. This is better be safe than sorry. Now, that power, that call, me able to do that, that's real power. That's strength, okay? And that is like a real brotherhood, if you ask me. And that's also what you get like when you're in the Mafia. And that's why sometimes it sounds so good being in that life. Because, look, when I was with Dominick, everybody knows my captain, my dear friend Dominick Cicale from Mafia Roundtable. Dominick had my back in the street. If I needed anybody gone or taken care of or whatever, he was right there, okay? And just like I was for him. When he needed something done, and as you might have heard over his show and my show, okay, we were there for each other, okay, more than once. And so it was 24/7. But that's the power of the Mafia. Okay, so you got a problem. It's almost like when I don't know if you guys, anybody watched The Sopranos back in the day when they finally made Christopher the wise guy. Paulie said to him, he says, listen, you have a problem, you bring it to this guy right here. And he was pointing to Tony Soprano because that's what you do now. You're not alone anymore in one way. It's a shame that the mafia is more cutthroat type of thing, and they get they're jealous if you got more money, or you made more connections, or you have something they don't have, or the boss likes you a little bit more or favors you on that side. But that's not the only time I've ever made a phone call like that. Okay, I don't know if I told you a story about Black Bart and characters and my friend's bar back in those days. I made a phone call, and a couple of my friends came right away, because I was dealing with about maybe 7 or 8 guys there, at that time, and I was by myself. And there's other things. Like one time I had to go see a guy. He was very wealthy. And sometimes when these rich guys, they get a lot of money, or they don't, have these kind of connections like me, or they think they want to do or whatever, they're just jerks. Well, I had to go see somebody for something, and I told the guy, I said, listen, the choice is yours, okay? You could do whatever you want. You can have me arrested, but you're not just arresting me. I go away for a little bit, okay? Forget about the bail and everything. I'm not alone. I got another 20, 30, 40, 50 guys behind me. Maybe even 1,000 if you want to count the whole family, because we don't let it go. So what are you going to do? You're going to walk around with armed bodyguards for the rest of your life? Or you think the police are going to protect you for the rest of your life? So you either do the right thing or you don't. That's it. That's on you. That's why I love people. And this is the reason why, like I said, I wasn't always the toughest guy. Even Dominick says he can get killed. Anybody can get killed in this life, and even when you're not into it, you don't. You get into a car today. You think you're driving down the road, somebody hits you and kills you. You don't know, but the whole thing is a lot of people don't think it's ever going to happen to them. But believe me when I tell you, listen, I had to work on some people that didn't pay. Like I told you guys about the pizza guy that my father had. I had to give him a beating in the pizza parlor. And let me tell you something, just the fact that he said he wasn't afraid of me and that stupid attitude. Look, I understand it's not that easy to admit that, you can't, you're not tough or anything like that. And I get it. Listen, nobody likes that. But the truth is the truth. I always said it too. If this guy was tough, like we talked about a couple other wise guys that were way tougher than me and everything, it doesn't matter. There's people out there tougher than you. That's it. There's people out there weaker than you. But sometimes when I had to go, this one particular guy, the fact that when my father said to me, he says, he said, Joseph, he said he ain't afraid of you. I went, oh, geez, now I got to go over there, because now he made me look bad in front of my father. So I had to pull him over the counter, throw him back over the counter, beat him all the way back where we was making the dough in the pizza parlor. And I didn't want to stop, because he just pissed me off that bad. Do I feel bad about it now? Not really, because he had it coming to him. a lot of.
Would you say your dad kind of instigated that fight?
Yeah, because my father knew what I would do. You listen, my mother, they always told my everybody in the family, my sister, everybody, don't tell your brother anything, because when it came to my family, I saw red, and that was it. I don't even know. There was a story here. I'll tell you another one real quick. This has nothing to do with the connections I had. Okay, and I was just an associate when I had these connections. Okay, and even when I was with 3rd Street, we were just all boys. We were just all a tight group. Okay, I think in a lot of ways we really cared about each other too. And I miss those guys, believe me, when I tell you. But my father we were home at my grandmother's house, which where we both were living at that time. You had to come through the front door. We had another apartment to be renting upstairs. Well, I don't know why they closed off one. Was my Uncle Chick and my Aunt Camille used to live upstairs, but they cut off the one door that had like a different staircase to go up there. I don't know why. Anyway, you had to come through the front door, go up my staircase, like in other words, through all where the bedrooms are and upstairs, and then knock on the door and then go up to the other flight of stairs to go to the other apartment. Anyways, I saw my father. He was getting ready to take a nap on the couch. And so I said, I'm going to go upstairs and lay down too. I think it was like a Sunday afternoon. So we were just doing nothing, watching TV. Well, I'm just about falling asleep in the house. And all of a sudden I hear, who are you? What are you doing? Who are you? And I woke up with that, and I ran to the top of the stairs. Now, the one stairs was like 1, 2, 3. Then there was a little platform, and then you go up the rest of the stairs. Well, I'm looking at this kid. He had long hair, long blonde hair. Never forget it. He had a gray leather jacket on. I never forget it. Well, the way he was looking at my father, he looked like he was going to hit my father, too. Now, the kid probably did explain the door was open, or I knocked and everything, but my father was sleeping, whatever. He only left the screen part door open, not the wooden door. I took 2 steps down. There's like about 8 steps there, whatever it was. And I took 2 steps down. The next thing I know, my hands was on this guy's throat. The only thing I remember was 2 things. I felt my hands touching each other. That's how the grip I had on his throat. And all I remember is my father's 2 hands on my arm saying, "Let him go, Joseph, let him go." Well, I kind of got a little sense back and I threw him out the house. And sure enough, if my father wasn't there, he would have been dead. I would have killed him. And I didn't even think of nothing about it, you know. Well, want to laugh later? About 4 or 5 months later, I'm in this place called Twin Donuts, and I'm in there with my friend Joe Ferry and a couple other guys. Joe Ferry was from Country Club too, so he come up to another show once in a while. Well, I was with a few guys. Well, this guy was buying donuts and whatever he was doing. He saw me, and I saw him too, and I recognized him. He recognized me. And after he bought the stuff and he's walking out, he goes like this, like this to me, like, oh, really? So after I did that to him, he still did that to me, right? Well, there was 2 doors. One, you can go out this way and exit, and this was the front door. He walked out this way. My friends all saw everything. Well, I walked out the side door, and I caught him just as he was walking past. I said, "Hey." He turned around, and he came like walking towards me a little bit, like, "Yeah, what are you gonna do?" Well, boom! I cracked him. I knocked him down. His bag went flying. I only knocked him. I only knocked him down. I didn't hit him that hard, so I didn't knock him out. But he was crawling like on his butt, like in his legs, like backwards, trying to get away from me. I said, "Get the hell!" I kicked his bag. I said, "Get the hell out of here!" And so my friends, by the time they came out, they saw him down. They said, "Damn, Joe, we missed that. We knew you were gonna do something when you snuck out the other door." I says, "Yeah, well, that's the kind of guy I was. I didn't play games when it wasn't time to play games. I was serious when it had to be serious. And I joked around when I had to joke around. And for the most part, I could understand most people not being afraid of me because I love to have fun. I love to joke around. I was laughing. I was sarcastic, but in a good way. You understand? I had like sarcasm, but in a good way. Okay? That's just the way I was. But that kind of pull in the Mafia, in your regular life, if you got crews behind you, you got people who really stand behind you like I had. Like I had Charlie Buono, Louis Galello, Patsy Morano, okay? I had Raymond Barreras, Johnny Valenti, Paulie Cervicelli, may he rest in peace. You had Louis Lenz, even Joe Colangelo, okay? And Joe Colangelo's father was a cop too. But all these people were great people, okay? And it just really feels, I didn't let it go to my head, okay? And like when I had Dominick in the Mafia, it gives you that sense that you have something, and you're a lot stronger when you want to do something, or if because you got people that are really going to behind you. It's almost like that old movie where Bugsy Siegel went to the guys, and he said he had an idea to open up the casino over there in the Flamingo in Las Vegas, and they backed him because it sounded like a good idea. Now it really was. I mean, he made some mistakes and he got killed for it, but the idea was good, and these people backed him with big money. That's power, bro. That's power.
Did you ever meet anybody or know of anybody personally that had that kind of pull and abused it, and maybe it got them even whacked or kind of?
Yeah, was a story that Dominick said. I'm trying to think of how it went, but people do abuse that power because then they let it go to their head and they make up stories, and you don't want to make up a story. If you're not on, listen, let me tell you something. In this life, you should just be straight up honest if you can, okay? No matter who you're with, but definitely with the wise guys because they could sniff out when you're telling them a lie, and that's it. Now, because you can have that kind of power being a wise guy or an associate or whatever, I'm not still trying to glorify the Mafia because it's ruthless. That's a ruthless game. You can get killed for anything just like that, and I'm not trying to glorify it. And like I said, the reason why we started this show, and I wanted to get my voice out there about the FBI, because I really think, to be honest with you, the Mafia can destroy, the FBI can destroy you way worse than the Mafia can. Okay, you could have the rest of your life living like a guy like me, exposed and all of this kind of stuff, and that's more worse than being killed by the Mafia. Because at least I'd be dead. Nobody's gonna. Only person that cares about I was dead. Maybe few people who left that loved me. Other than that, I don't know. Not because I'd be dead. But it's a good feeling, but you're really it's dangerous at the same time too. But yeah, you can get killed for abusing that.
So you didn't know anybody personally, like off, like well-known mobsters that kind of were like that?
Well, yeah, there was a lot of people that did it and abused it, like the same people like in the Genovese crime family, because they, once they became straightened out and everything, and they were associates, they thought who they was, and then they thought they can do no wrong. Like we talked about Sal Locke and Hippie and all them guys. They used to jump you in the bar. They can't even fight by themselves, or they had to always shoot you because they really they were taking steroids. I remember I saw them. They were all beefed up muscle, and they still couldn't fight by themselves. They were like, to me. Look, they did time. They kept their mouth shut. By all means, they did. I can't take that away from anybody who did time. Even me, I did time too. But they abused it because they knew they had backing now. You know what I mean? They were trying to. Most people, when you're trying to come up, you always want to do. You over emphasize everything. So you want to do it even worse. My father did the same thing when my uncle Pat. He sent them after a guy, and he said, "Don't take no for an answer." He put the guy in the hospital because he wanted to show that he's capable. You know what I mean? And so you can make mistakes like that too. Because my uncle said, "I didn't tell you to do that to him. I just I told you not to take no for an answer, but you have to put him in the hospital." You know what I mean? But that's the way my father was. He was no joke.
Were you ever afraid to call in a favor that maybe whoever you were calling in the favor with would think that it was unwarranted and they would, be mad at you for bringing unwanted attention to the family?
That's a good question. I should be afraid, but I never was because I never abused that power I had, that privilege that I had of calling somebody or letting everybody know that I might have really needed them. See, you got to be careful because that could get you hurt, that could get you killed, that could get you shelved, that could get you a lot of things, get you fined, it could get a lot of different things. But most of the time, or any time that I ever used it, the 3 or 4 times I might have used that, I always made sure that it was my last. Like it was, I felt like I had no other choice, no alternative, And everybody kind of knew what was going on. Like I never kept any secrets. Like I would always tell my captain anything I needed. I would always tell Dominic what was going on. Look, you've seen and you heard the stories of the people we were going to grab or whatever. So I was confident enough in my relationship with Dominic and the rest of the guys we were with that I could always come to the table with something and never abuse that because that. So in other words, realistically, I never worried about that because I always made sure it was right. You know, that's my point. That's my point, anyways.
When you're out at a bar and somebody's, you get in a fight with somebody, did people know kind of in New Rochelle that not to mess with you because you had that
100%.
those connections?
100%. First of all, I hoped anyway that I was pretty much well liked in my town anyway. Like I said, I used to be really like a lot of funny and stuff like that. But, as I got older, a lot of people understood, that if you're going to have a fight with me, pretty much you're going to have to, it's never going to end until it ends. You know what I mean? So yeah, and that's kind of cool too. I had a lot of respect for that in my own town in New Rochelle, absolutely. Even in the Bronx, when I was certain places that I would go, even if the people that there didn't like me, they kind of knew I was still who I was around, and so that gave me a lot of protection. But I didn't abuse it either too. I never went to a restaurant and talked nasty to people. Even the people that owed me money and stuff like that. I always told them, listen, what works for you? Okay, you needed 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, whatever. What works for you? What are you able to pay a month? Let's work this out. What are you making? I sit down there and talk with the people. And then that's why I used to get a little bit more angry when they couldn't come up with the money because I was like, listen, we agreed to this. You can't change the script later on in the middle of the whole thing here. You understand? And then I would get angry. But most people I think really liked me, but they were in their own way afraid because I even had to hit a few of my friends. Sometimes you had to fight some of your friends. You know what I mean? And not that I always wanted to, but sometimes that's what you got to do. But you can't take shit, if you want to say it that way. You know what I mean? From some people, you just can't.
So the flip side to that question, I guess, would be: was there ever anyone that saw the power and the pull you had, and was jealous of it, where they would challenge you because of it. Like, oh, he's not so tough. I bet he's not that tough.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Listen, I don't think I got challenged because of it. Listen, like I said, I always, in my town, everybody knew I would go. I wasn't the toughest guy in my town. My town had a lot of tough guys in there. You know what I mean? Let's face it. But you would really have to come up you'd really have to hate me to really have a fight with me, because I really was really good to everybody. I told you I had the stupid problem with Arnold Brazano. He wanted to have a problem with me. Yeah, he's supposed to be connected to. I don't know if he is or not. If he got straightened out or not, I really don't know.
What family?
He's with. I think his father was with the Gambino family, so he might have went with that crew too. But he always thought who the hell he was. And listen, I always gave him respect. I was always nice to him, but he just didn't like me, period. My friend Lenny used to come to me and tell me, Arnold don't like you because, you think who you are. And that was never the case. That was never the case. I never thought who I was. I knew who I was. I knew my family had a good standing in that town, or whatever the case may be. He was just one of those guys who just, that's the way he was, So I had a few people like that in the town. But other than that, and I should have fought him. He pulled me outside one time to a bar. We wanted to walk around the corner. I should have just laid him out. And all my crew was there. He had his guy, Quays was there with him. And I think that was like his guy that would back him up. And Quays, this guy, he was one of the nicest guys. Quays, tough guy, ready to fight anybody, good shape, and a real all around nice guy. I can't even say nothing bad about him, to be honest with you. And I think I don't know if he didn't even like me at one time. Matter of fact, I actually made him go to my doctor to get the hair transplants. That's how much I liked him. I wouldn't have, if I thought, that he really hated me that bad, I wouldn't have gave him a good doctor to go to like that, But I like him. And I also was going to take Arnold there too. I was actually going to go down to New York City with him to take him to my guy. But that's the kind of guy I was. Why you didn't like me is ridiculous. I was just trying to go through life like anybody else. You know what I mean?
Since your father was a made man with the Genovese crime family, did you ever did that allow you to have some kind of pull with them? Were you able to also call in favors from those guys?
Oh, sure. If I needed anything, I could always go to them, even when my father wasn't around. Look, when my father went on the lam, I used to collect the money until later on. I collected like for a few months or whatever till they put somebody else in my father's place.
Who did you give that? Who were you supposed to report that money to?
I forget the guy's name, but I used to meet him in New York City at the Jacob Javits Center off of 11th Avenue over there. So I used to, I would give him money, or he told me not to go there anymore and stuff like that. I forget his name. He was a really nice guy. But anybody like that, even I could have went to Frankie Famara, who was in the Gambino crime family, and Frankie used to have the club over there on Union Avenue and 4th Street, between 4th and 3rd Street. They all know your father. They all know, my father anyways. My father, who he was around, what he was capable of, what he was going to do if he had to. My father made his bones early in life. So that right there gives you a little bit of... and I don't mean to bring this up again, but Dominick's dad too, the same thing. Dominick's father was very well to do, very well known, and he made his bones. He was a tough guy, and he was what he was later on in life, but he had a good reputation in the street. Okay, that he was keep his mouth shut, that he was a good guy. He was around Big Ernie, so that clout helps you as a younger. So if I ever had a problem, I could go right there. You know what I'm saying?
How did you form that connection with the Gambino member that you were talking about a second ago?
Well, Frankie Famara used to be a guy. He used to be in the card club all the time. And my father, they would play cards there and everything like that. All the different people would come in and out of that club from all kinds of different families. You know what I mean?
Was that common?
Oh, yeah, because you could always go there. You guys remember the movie Goodfellows, when Jimmy Burke would walk into the guy's place over there and he was playing the cards and he says, keep him coming. He gave Henry Hill the money and all of this. And Jimmy Burke was a guy, he was doing hits when he was a kid. So they all respected him. They all liked him. He was loved to be a thief or whatever his whole thing was. So yeah, it's not unheard of. Look, sometimes on the Windows case, it was a big case. I don't know if anybody heard of it. It was the Windows case where I think it was, I don't know how many different, there was Lucchese, I think maybe the Genovese, and maybe another crew. There was like three different families. They had this deal where they were putting windows, all different windows in different buildings in New York. You're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars, and there was a few people all involved with it because you can join together when you're like that. You know what I'm saying? You can go see somebody else from a different crew. Look, Joe Messino used to be good friends with Gotti. All other wise guys, remember we had Louis Cassman on,
Yeah.
and look at what Louis said. All the people came when John walked into the place. That's how much respect he had, and everybody liked him. You know what I'm saying? And feared him probably too, which was smart on their part. But you know, you have that kind of connections like that. You can join forces a little bit. I mean, everybody gets their end, everybody gets their cut, and that's all that matters. At the end of the day, it's about money, and that's why I said it was a shame that you had the kind of connections. Look, even Jimmy Calandra from the Bath Avenue crew. I mean, he had a really nice crew of himself together. So that's a real brotherhood. They stuck up for each other. They'd fight for each other. And just like Dominick said the same thing too. It doesn't matter if you're from the Genovese family, we're from the Bonanno family, and there might be somebody from the Lucchese family. If one of us get into a fight, we all jump in for that guy too. Even though we're not part of that crew, we still stick up for each other because nobody's supposed to put their hands on a wise guy.
Right.
And even if I was an associate, Dominick, I had the carte blanche. So, I mean, look, I was very fortunate.
Did your pull within the Mafia ever save your life?
That's a really good question. Well, let's put it this way. If I was shaking down a guy or whatever the case may be and I had gotten arrested, to some degree it would save my life, sure. It saved me time in prison, that kind of thing. And also, before when I was talking about the fight over there at the Parkard Avenue in Rochelle, okay? How do I know one of those guys could have punched me, maybe killed me, stabbed me? I don't know.
But you had your team there with you.
Yep. And when I made that call, so life is fragile. So yeah, I personally think anytime I use that power, that control, that perk that I had, yeah, I think it definitely saved my life. Listen, when you have a guy, look, I was having a fight one time at this place in Yonkers. No, I'm sorry, Mount Vernon. What the heck was it called? No, Night Moves, Hoops. I forget what it was called. I think it was called Hoops. Okay. There was about 20 something guys out there that I probably had a fight with a couple of guys the week before. We went back there. Now they had their whole crew. Well, sure enough, my friend Mike Lombardo got the bounces. I went out through the exit door like that. That saved my life. I probably could have got killed. Me and my friend Lenny. We were in there. That's another thing. But he was there. I didn't have to make the call, but he helped me. Mike Lombardo saved my life. And the other guy, Tom Layton, he had the car, and we told him we seen him, and he was not with us. He wasn't like our best friend or anything, but we knew him. We said, Tom, we need a big favor, and Mike told me what to do. He pulled the car by the exit. He had the door open. It was a 2-door Nova. Me and Lenny just dove into the car when these hey, you know what I mean? It's a little scary when you got 20 guys out over there. So in a lot of ways, yeah, of course, it probably definitely saved my life, without a doubt.
So would you describe yourself as a hothead back in the day?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes I would be, yeah. Listen, my family life, like I told everybody the other day, I was fortunate that I had the mother and father right. So I was lucky that they loved me. They did their best to do good and right for me, okay? But when when I saw them, getting separated, that takes a toll on a kid. That's why I know about it. I wouldn't speak for something that didn't happen to me, I could imagine. But I had the back and forth between between my father, and to see your two people who you really love go back and forth like that, yeah. I guess I had some anger issues. I could fly off the handle when it comes time. Like anybody else in this life, you don't want to be disrespected or anything, and you don't want to be hurt like that. You know what I mean?
I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So being that you could were known to fly off the handle and stuff like that back then, were you ever afraid that you were going to make a phone call and do something and not be able to take it back? Like in other words, you use that pull that you had in a situation where maybe you didn't need it, where you got too angry, things got out of hand, and then you end up dead or in jail.
It depended on how I escalated it. See, if I was a hothead, I always did things myself on a spur of the moment. So I really was more detrimental to myself than anybody else. I didn't really ask anybody to ever get involved with me if I, like that kind of thing, or if I flew off the handle really quick, or if I had to crack somebody really fast. I didn't ask for any help, and there was, to be quite honest with you, there was no time to have anybody come with me. But if if it escalated that way, and I really needed that help, I don't think the people, they knew me well enough to, my friends knew me well enough to trust me enough that I was really in trouble. That's why I called. So to be honest with you, I never really doubted that, because that's the way I was. You know what I mean? Like I said,
Right.
Lenny, I was with Lenny, and Lenny said to me, "Make the call, Joe." He didn't say, "Let me call somebody." He said, "Make the call, Joe." So that tells you right there. You know what I mean? So, anyways, guys, I really hope you like this episode. Don't forget to tune into the Patreon channel. I got a lot of good movie reviews there. You're gonna really like that. Anyways, have a great week. God bless everybody. Take care and be safe.